Hello, I'm Carole Massey, and I'm delighted to say that my latest book, Beginner's Guide to Drawing Portraits, has just been published by Search Press. It has many examples in there using pencil, charcoal, pen, soft pastels, pastel pencils and coloured pencils. But today I'd like to show you how to do a fairly straightforward portrait using monochrome range of pastel pencils. It's 3 colours, maybe a couple others to add a little bit of colour at the end. But it's going to be a fairly short demonstration and hopefully will inspire you to take up your pastel pencils and start doing portraits. So let's get started. Right, we're ready to start. So I've got 3 pastel pencils. I've got a terracotta, white, and then I've got one called burnt carmine. That is a reddish brown. If you haven't got that one, you could use a dark brown. I've got my kneadable eraser and a ruler, and I've got 3 further colours. If I want to add a little bit of colour in the eyes and the cheeks and the lips at the end, I can. So I've got a dark green, a pink, and a sort of mid blue. I'm going to put those to one side. I won't use them yet. And I've got that to one side. Okay. So let's get started. So the first thing I would do on any portrait, whether I'm working from a photograph or whether I'm working from life, is to establish the angle of the eye line. In this case, you can see it's tipping down on the left. So normally I would just lay my pencil along there and then move my pencil over and draw a line. You might actually find it easier if you used a ruler. So you, for the point of view of the video, you can see that better where it's lying. So I'm lying it along the pupils, and then I'm going to just move that and put it to find a suitable place to fix in the head. So I'm going to sort of have slightly above halfway in the middle of the paper, and I'm going to draw a line there. I'm starting with obviously the terracotta pastel pencil. Okay, so the next thing to do is establish where you want the centre of the eyes to be, where the pupils are going to be. So if we put one perhaps here, and then I think probably around about here will be good. That's going to be probably roughly twice the size, or no, it's not twice, it's probably 1.5 times this finished drawing is going to be 1.5 times the size of my reference photograph, which will mean the head, not only the width between the eyes, but all the measurements will be around about 1.5 times up, and that will make the head probably about, if I look at on here, that's the depth of my head, so it's going to be about here. So my head is going to be about that big. I've come in a bit closer here so you can see the eyes in a bit more detail. So we've established the eye line and where the centre of the pupils are going to be. So now let's draw the eye. The top lid tends to be a little bit more curved than the bottom lid, and in this case the corner of the eye and the tear duct in the centre there fall a little bit below the point of where the centre of the pupil is. It's just drawing this bottom lid. It's slightly more curved here and curves up to the tear duct. If we draw it again, we'll draw it lightly to start with, we can always alter it. The top lid, if you like, cuts through the sphere of the iris. Let's put it in the other eye, and then we can see if we've got them the right sort of size. So this eye here, again, more of a curve to the top lid. Let's make sure they're on the line into the tear duct. Look at the distance between the tear ducts. It's very often a similar width to the width of the eye itself, particularly on a straight-on view, but obviously this is slightly 3/4, so it'll be a little bit different, but it's just something to bear in mind. And then the depth of the lid, a little bit more showing there than here, less there, and a little bit more gap on that side. So let's go back to the eyes now. So we've drawn in the eyes. Let's talk about think about doing the eyebrows as well. If we put them in lightly, we can always altered slightly. The nice thing about working in pastel is it's easy. If something isn't quite right, you can actually just rub it out with your finger, or you can use your kneadable eraser and rub it out as well. Okay, let's get the eyebrows in, and so I'm keeping the eyebrows at the same sort of parallel line to start with as the eye line. As you see me just look at this and done a line across here. There's no harm in putting these, if you like, construction lines in. They can always be taken out at the end if they're too intrusive. Usually by the time you've done the other drawing, they don't even notice. So let's just put the eyebrows in there. Before we move on, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just indicate the white of the eye in here. Working with the pencils, you will find that if you want to get a nice bright clean white, it's best to work on the paper and not try to work over some pastel that you've already put down. So at this early stage, I'm just going to establish those lighter whites to the eyes. Just do a little bit more to the eyes before I move on. So let's just put in the pupils. Let's just use my darker pencil to just put in pupils. It's easy to get the eyes looking the wrong way, basically. Obviously, they've got to match. The pupils have got to be the same size, and they've sort of got to be feeling that you're looking in the right direction. So it's important to get the pupil right in the middle of the iris itself. If the top lid is cutting through a lot of the sphere of the iris, then it's a good idea actually to ghost in the whole of the sphere, and that by that way you know that you're going to get the pupil right in the middle, and you can always take the eyelid over that, if you like, the sphere that you've drawn in initially. So let's just darken her lids a little bit. Probably towards the end I'll put a little bit of colour in her eyes, but I'm not going to do that yet. And at this stage, I think, although very often in portraits I will add the highlight last, I think in this case, again, because I want to work on clean paper, I'm just going to put a little bit of highlight in there just to remind myself not to go over that area. Okay, so we've got the eyes in. We're not doing an awful lot of shading at the moment. Next thing is to place the nose. Let us, and to do that, obviously the distance to measure the length of the nose is quite difficult. There's no set point here where we could say this is where we start measuring. This is, well, obviously we want to finish here, but here is difficult. So what we do, or what I like to do, what my method of doing is to use, if you like, a triangulation process. So I'm going to do a line from her pupil down to the base of the nose one way, and then the same, repeat the same the other way, from pupil to the base of the nose the other way. So we use a triangle. Where those lines meet will be on the base of her nose. So I can do that, again, for the point of view of the video. Very often, if I'm just working on a portrait myself, I'll just use my pencil to do it. Or if I'm working from life, I'll hold the pencil up in midair and in front of the model. But in this case, I think for the purposes of you being able to see it clearly on the video, I'm going to use a ruler. And so I want to just, without twisting it, without twisting my hand or my arm or my wrist, I'm just going to move that over so we get a parallel line and ghost that in. Let's go and check it again because I might have just moved. And it's from here. So again, from the pupil to the base of the nose there. Let's just move that over. Yeah, perhaps just a little bit down there. So when I say the base of the nose, I'm just pausing for thought there so I can just put my thoughts into words. When I say the base of the nose, this is quite clear on this reference photograph. In some cases, you'll find that maybe you're looking down on a face, so you won't be able to see the base there. But you have to, therefore, choose a point that you can see. Maybe it's a highlight at the end of the nose. So as long as you know which point you're going to and you can put the same point on your drawing, that's fine. So if you can't see the base of the nose exactly, whatever drawing you're doing, you might go for another point, like the tip of the nose, for example. Okay, so we've done a line one way. Let's do the line the other way. And move that over. Let's just put that in lightly. Let's just try again. I think I got caught up on some masking tape down here. Let's just repeat that exercise. and well, we'll use that side of the ruler. That's fine. Okay, so that is going to be the base of the nose, that point there. The next thing I would do is to draw a line, if you like, where the nostrils fall. In this case, the nostrils will, the eye line, the nostrils and the corners of the mouth will all be more or less parallel. So I know that the nostrils are going to sort of be on this sort of line. So sometimes the nostrils will tip up from the base of the nose, and sometimes they're on a straight line as they are here, and sometimes they'll tip down slightly. So it's a point worth looking at, worth noticing. I really want to find out the width of the nose now. It could, how wide is it, how narrow is it? Very often a nose is probably larger than you think it's going to be. One fault is that people tend to, particularly beginners, tend to draw the nose a lot smaller than it is. So I'm going to do a vertical line up, which I've just drawn in this side, and then on this side I'm going to do a line, and I can see that the nose comes out, vertical line up, catching the tip of the nose. The nostril there is going to go sort of halfway through the white there, so it's going to be a bit from about here down here. And then what I want to do first, before I do any more lines with my terracotta, is actually just put in that highlight. So I'm just going to, now I've got, just going to get rid of those construction lines a little bit, and we can put in probably the highlight coming just on the bridge of the nose there, and then it's not entirely straight, and then the actual tip of the nose is up here somewhere and coming round to, let me just move that heavy mark there a little bit where it's my plotting point for the base of the nose, and we've got a line that's coming round here, and the nostrils coming round there. Right, back to my terracotta, and let's just do a little bit of drawing in here. So we've got base of the nose. Let's get this nostril in here, and then this one's coming round there. So let's just get a little bit of, it's the highlights and the shading that give shape to the nose. If you're thinking about the bone structure, the eye and the eye socket and the bones, the underlying bones to the head, skull bones, which obviously give shape and character to the whole head. You'll have a bone is coming sort of like midway down the nose, and the rest of it is really sort of cartilage and gristle, etc. So it's the highlights and the shadows that really give form and depth and shape to the nose. So let's just put in a little bit of, we can see a shadow coming under here and this way, and sort of round the nostril. And let's not be scared of putting a little bit of shadow right down the nose here. And I'm just changing the direction of my pencil to get put a little bit of hatching marks in here. All these techniques are described in the book of how to apply shadow, as well as, of course, how to draw the features. And this nose triangle method that I've just shown you is also very clearly explained several times in the book. I find it a foolproof way of both working from a photograph and from a model. Let's get a little bit of form there. While we're doing some shading here, do a little bit more. We've got a little bit of shading around the eyes here as well. And just before we move on from the nose, let's just take the darker pencil and just give a little bit more definition to that nostril. Sort of almost like a tear shape there. A little bit of darker in there. Okay, let's now position the mouth. You can, if you like, do it by eye, but it's easy to get it wrong. You can measure that distance maybe against the width of an eye, but if you're looking at your reference, maybe that's quite a small distance and the eye is not very big, and you can easily get it a millimetre out, which will make throw the whole thing out. So I'm going to use the same triangulation process that I used to place the nose. So again, pupil, and this time to the middle of the mouth. I've actually got a little tiny spot on the on my reference photograph where I want that to go. So put the ruler down, and without moving my wrist or my elbow, just slide the ruler over and make a little mark. You can double check that to make sure you haven't twisted at all. Push it over. That's fine that way, and do it the other way. Using the ruler is probably easy on a photograph. I very often just do it with my pencil, but as I say, for the point of view of for the purpose of the video, it's I'm doing that wrong again. For the purpose of the video, I think it's easier for you to see with the ruler. Of course, if I were doing it from a model, from life, I would be holding the pencil up in the air and look at the angle on my model. Right, let's put that in there and make a mark, and then double check that. I have got some lumps of masking fluid down there. I can keep catching my ruler on those, so that's why I've slid it up to use the base of the ruler. Let's just try that again. Just make sure that's correct, and just slide it over without twisting it round. Yep, that's fine. So I'm going to say that the middle of the mouth, the lips, the point between the lips and what I can see as the middle of the mouth is here. So that's the middle. The top lip will be above and the bottom lip below, obviously. So now to do the width of the mouth, the same as I did with the nose. So I'm going to take a vertical line up from this corner of the mouth up, and it more or less hits the left-hand side of that iris. So coming down from the left-hand side of the iris, let's just do that. And then on this side, that corner there is really right under that nostril, so it's going to be that side there. And we've already said that the eye line, the base of the nostrils and the corners of the mouth are more or less parallel, so I could probably do that as well, just to make sure I got the angle of the mouth correct. It's sort of going to be on that sort of angle there. So the next thing to do is to draw in her philtrum, this sort of darker, if you like, dip of colour comes down from the base of the nose there, and then to draw in her lips. It's got nice shaped, nice cupid's bow there. It's very slightly curved that way. And then this one comes round quite sharply in there. The line between the lips is not straight like that, it's slightly curved, so it dips a little bit in the middle and comes up and dips down that way. And I'm going to just draw in the curve at the bottom here, and switch to my white pencil and get in that highlight, which is quite descriptive of the shape and the turn of the lips there. A little bit of highlighting across here, and a little line of light across there. Right, okay, let's just carry on. Let's put a little bit of shading in this top lip. The top lip is normally darker than the bottom lip because obviously generally you're having a top light on the model, daylight, sunlight or overhead light in a room, and so the top lip will usually be darker. Okay, just move down to here and then I'll come back and do the upper lips. So we've got the shadow coming under, round, and then the sort of like the middle of the chin. She hasn't actually got a dimple, but there's this shadow here. Again, it's set back a little bit because her head's tilted. So that's going to be about here. So the base of the chin will be about here. Again, this measurement you can either measure from there to there, or sometimes a good measurement is from base of the nose to the chin. Let's do that on the reference. Base of the nose to the chin, and compare it maybe to the okay, so it's really the corner of that eye to that pupil, roughly there. So let's do that on the corner of this eye to this right hand pupil is nose, the bottom of the chin. I'm not taking the tip of the pencil, I'm taking this ridge here, the shoulder of the pencil, so that should be a little bit longer according to that. A little shadow coming up here. You look at this distance, you think, oh, that seems a long distance. By the time you get your shadow in and then you put your highlight in, surprising how it fills up the gap. Right, now I've got my white pencil. I'm just going to go back and do a little bit of definition here, because the light is catching just this side of her upper lip and definitely on this side. And I'm just going to switch to my darker pencil just to get a little bit more definition in here. So we've got this upper lip, the line between. I might have made that a little bit too marked, just straighten it out a little bit. Always get a slightly darker shading in the corner of the mouth. A little bit of shading here. And then round that highlight and into the corner of the mouth there. Just draw that in darker, just to get to define that a little bit more. Okay, so let's press on. So let's now we've got the features in the eyes, nose and the mouth. Let's think about the shape of the head, and then we can move over and do the ear, and then move on to the hair last of all, and then refine anything we feel we need to. Right, so let's start here. This is quite using my white pencil, and just do a little bit of more definition here. So if I go from the corner of the eye to the side of the head, just quite narrow this bit here, and coming in and round the brow arch here, the brow arch. Let me just do this on a bit of. The brow arch is then, it recedes there to go into the temple. Again, this I need to check that distance, but I'm just going to put a little bit of highlight in just to get started. See if it looks about right. And then the widest point of where the cheekbone is, this widest point of this curve, I need to assess that, how wide that is. Perhaps I can look at, you need to cross-reference across the face all the time, not just thinking of one thing in isolation, but maybe this highlight is sort of almost parallel, maybe slightly higher than the tip of the nose. So again, so I'm going to be thinking about putting this in here. Again, we can alter if it doesn't, just get it in first and see how it looks, and then maybe alter it if needs be. Now back to my terracotta, and I can, if you like, plot points, the width, maybe the width of here, and then maybe how wide it's going to be, maybe coming in here, and then the turn of the jaw. So let's just continue from the white and come in here. And in and across the chin. Let's just go back up here and get the top hairline in here. While I'm here, I'm just going to do a little bit of definition to that eyebrow. Okay, let's have a look at this. So if we go now from the pupil maybe to this, the point of the hair where it sort of divides, sort of like goes three ways here, doesn't it? Up and over to the left and then to the right. So establish this point here. I know this is lower, but so if we measure that, let's think it's about there, and measure that again against the eyes, sort of about the width between corner of the eye to corner of the eye. Let me just double check that. Yeah, so I'm going from this tear duct to the top of this point here, and it's measuring about the same as the width between the eyes. If you want to be a little bit more precise, you can actually do it with a ruler, if you're worried about my vague form of measuring. So that's about 30 millimeters, and the width between the eyes is 30 millimeters. I've used a ruler to do my triangulation process, but usually I don't use a ruler throughout my portrait painting. It can get a little bit restrictive and it can refine you a little bit. So I tend to use the pencil to make it more of probably a rougher measurement. Right, so what we need to do now is to establish the depth of the forehead, so we can get the hair in, and then come back and do the line of the chin and the ear, etc. So we could measure this depth here. Let's use the ruler so you can see on here. If I use my pencil, it tends to obliterate, so you can't see what's going on. So I'm going to use my ruler in this case. So if I do from the separation point here, where the hair goes in different directions, that's about 30 millimeters, 3 centimeters. And let's measure something on here. Corner of the eye to corner of the eye is 30 as well. So let's do the same on here. So on my drawing, that is around 52. Let's do the same here, 52. So that is the point where the hair separates. So that is that point there, which is the hair going in that direction. And then drops down a little bit here into this darker area, so it's coming round. Let's do the direction it's growing in, falling in. Then this is coming down this way. Okay, we'll just get it in lightly first of all, and then we can put highlights and darkening areas afterwards. So that's coming up that way. And then this is probably around about that deep. Let's just get this lock coming down that's coming across her head. And down that way, it's going to come across through here and round her chin. This is quite important here, where the hair falls on her, across her jawline. It just shows the edge of her jaw there, which is, I quite like that. And let's just get that in. You know, the hair's come down that way. Let's just get this flow of the hair. Nice long sweeps, a pastel pencil. Let's just switch to white and get it a little bit lighter at the end here, so it brings it away from her chin, line of her chin. There, switch it back again. Get the rest of it in this up here, quite dark, and there's a gap between the lock and the rest of her hair. And what is important is getting the ear in, and looking at the level of the ear. It's sort of on a level with her nose there, so the ear is going to be over here somewhere, and there's a little bit of a gap between here, so I think that's the ear is going to be in there. Now I can't see it very much. It's good to get it in. It's a good definition, a good stop point to the side of the head, and it's one of those features that we tend to ignore a little bit. It's it's a bit of a minor player, as it were, in a portrait, but actually it's quite an important player, because it actually gives you the width of the head, the bulk of the head. If you get that wrong, it's a common fault to get it too narrow. You don't realise how wide this area is, and you change the likeness completely to somebody. So it's all part of getting a likeness. So let's get the neckline in too. So we've got chin here, neck is coming in around about here, and sort of coming in. Difficult to see actually what's going on with the neck exactly, but let's just ghost it in so we can get a feeling of the form. And also on this side, if I continue the neck up, it would come through there. So that's the line of the neck that side. Into the shoulder line again. The shoulder line is important. It all helps to add character. And let's try and look at the shoulder line this side. It's more difficult to see. Over here somewhere. Let's go back and do the rest of the hair. Again, just using this, the mid-tone, the terracotta. I can add a little bit of white. If I don't fill in too much here with terracotta, I can put some white on afterwards. to give a highlight, and this is coming over her ear, round, falling this way, and then into the plait. Can't see all the definition in the pack, but just to get a little bit of definition in. That's actually sticking out quite a bit more. If I do again line the pencil up, the plait is actually sticking out more here. Let's just get a bit more lumpier there, not too lumpy. Right, now we've drawn our portrait. We've got the features in position, we've got the hair, the ears, the neck, etc. So if you like, this is the final stage to refine it, add a little bit more tone, maybe just alter the features slightly, really look at the your reference photograph, really think what is it that makes her, maybe some measurements a little bit out, need to check things a bit. Sometimes, I'm not going to do it here, but sometimes if something is wrong and you can't quite get it right and you can't see exactly why it's wrong, a good idea is to turn the whole thing upside down, both your drawing and your reference, turn it all upside down, and in that way you look at it, the whole thing, in a more abstract way, and it will help you see where your mistakes are a lot better. And there is a page in the book which actually explains how to do this as well, and it explains in a little bit more detail. Right, so what am I going to do here? I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning up first. I've got some of these construction lines in, and then I'm going to assess what I need to do. So I'm just going to take these out with the putty rubber. While I'm doing that, I'm just going to clean up a little bit here, the size of the mouth. I'm going to take a little bit of shadow out here. I don't actually want to rub it, so I'm just going to dab out a little bit of the pastel here. Construction lines here, just clean up here and there. I'm not sure if this side of the face is a little bit wide. Make a little bit more of her mouth. But first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with the darker pencil and do a little bit more. So I'm just going to roughly go around and add a bit more tone, make her come to life a little bit more. This was quite telling, this shadow in and around her eyebrow. While I'm just going to drop that eyebrow a little bit because I think that's a little bit high. And just add a little bit of cross-hatching there just to make it slightly darker. Similarly with this one. In this case, I'm working over the drawing, and these pastel pencils aren't too smudgy, but if you have got a pencil that's very smudgy, then you probably need to put a piece of paper over your work, so you don't smudge your masterpiece, what you've done. Right, while I'm doing that, I'm going to put a little bit of highlight in around here and some over here, catching the edge of her hair here before I go in with my darks, and a few more wispy bits down there. Going dark to the side of her neck and just darken up think I'll just darken up that whole area a little bit there. Just do a little bit more drawing back in so we don't lose it altogether. Right, let's go back in and do the important features, her eyes and her nose, etc. Just going to get that fold there in her eye. That's quite telling, and she's got a little highlight up there. Just define the tear ducts a little bit. If you're working in colour, it's a good idea to get the tear ducts in red. It helps to animate the face a little bit more. And I did say I use a little bit of colour at the end, so I'm going to just put in a little bit of blue in there. And I've got some dark green as well, because she's not entirely blue. Her eyes are actually more hazily. So just there, and then just darken. If at any point you find you're using your pastel pencil a lot and they're getting a bit blunt, when you come to do little details like this, you probably will find that you have to sharpen them a bit. Not too bothered about doing a lot to eyelashes. You could just do a little bit of a flick, but you don't sort of want baby doll eyelashes. Right, let's just do a little bit of shading in her nose. If you look at her nose, it's actually there's quite a lot of tone in the nose there. Let's just smudge that in a little bit to make it a bit softer. There's a little bit of shading, get a bit of form down this cheek. And this one. And across her forehead. There. And while we're up here, let's get that highlight. And a little bit of shading on this side, into the ear. Back to here, let's have a look at the little bit more in the nose, bit more shadow under here, I think. That's probably a little bit too much now, so let's just dab a little bit off. Redefine this nostril. You'll find that as you're working over the work, which I have been doing, you move a little bit, you lose some of the darks. So I'm just going back in and getting in my highlights and my darks again. I think we have a little bit of a highlight across the nose there. And also you get the light, you get a little light catching in the corner of the eyes there, just in that bit. We did a little bit of highlight there. Perhaps a little bit lighter at the top here, just to bring the eyes to life a bit more. Okay, into the mouth. What do we think of the mouth? Is it the right shape? This line, this subtle line between the lips is very telling. Smooth that. Got that sort of pouty look there at the corner of her lips. Trying to catch that. Shadow underneath. Shadow cast from the top lip over the bottom lip. Oops. Let's clean that up a little bit. A little bit of shading under here. and just sort out this shading around here. Right, let's just do get a bit of form into the under the chin here, into the neck. Got a highlight coming across there, just gives a little bit of definition to that area. You can use the mid-tone of the paper as your to suggest something darker, so you've got a light area here. This will naturally feel a little bit darker. Let's just get a little bit of the dark carmine. So this is a pencil called Burnt Carmine. It's very much like a brown. It's a sort of a brown, but it's a reddish brown, and it's quite sympathetic for portraits. Quite a nice colour for portraits. And then now it's a question of knowing when to stop, isn't it, really? How much have we done? Have we done enough? Right, I think we finished. That's a cooler today, I think. Let's just clean that up. Okay, there we are. So there we are. There's the finished portrait. And I hope that seeing those simple steps has inspired you to have a go at doing portraits yourself. Have a look at the book, The Beginner's Guide to Drawing Portraits, which will guide you through all the different techniques that you need to do portraits.